So I should have checked if it was, we're at 7:20. We're good.
Okay.
How's it going, everyone? Thanks for showing up. I don't know where everyone else is at. In Wisconsin, we're starting to get warmer weather. It's warming up. The sun's out. It's a good feeling.
You know what? We didn't share it on Instagram that we were doing this.
I did. I threw it up
Did
quick
you?
on the story. Yeah.
Oh, my bad.
You can share that. You can share that quick. Give us a little more buzz, but
Yeah, I'll do it right now. Hang on. For some reason, I don't think I got, or maybe you didn't tag me.
I didn't tag you. I don't think I tagged you. Sorry.
No, you're good.
But 13 views on the story. So
Okay.
it's out there. A little last minute, but hopefully we still got a few people joining us. We're a day early. We know, but timing works out that way, and we still got some great stuff to talk about today. As always, if you guys got questions, drop it in the chat. We'll be answering them throughout. But a few minutes into this, I'll introduce the topic for this week. We think it's going to be pretty helpful to probably go over a little bit more in depth on some of the Keepa analytics. Keepa is obviously like an amazing tool that we use every single day. So we're going to review the Keepa offers tab today. A lot of great information there, but there's also a lot of information that could potentially give you some wrong data or help give you the information that will sway you to the wrong decisions. So we're going to hopefully, relieve some misconceptions and talk about how we use the Keep Offers tab. And that's going to give us, or help to give you guys some smarter sourcing tips because, yeah, like I said, Keep is great. The offers tab is great, but you got to know how to understand that data because there's a ton of data there. So we're going to go basically look at a product. We're going to go down the line on each part of the Keep Offers tab and then, break each section down because there's a lot of it there. So if you guys have any questions along the way, definitely, ask away. We're here to answer questions. Anything not related to Keepa, but Amazon related, we're happy to answer as well. So don't feel like you got to keep it to Keepa questions. But Jonathan, you ready to jump in?
Yep, let's do it. Do I need to present or do something so that my Keepa?
I'll share my screen. I think that's going to be good enough. Just Let me know if we can see it.
Yep.
I think we should be good here. All right. You can see the offer Keepa tab here.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. So if you guys didn't know, I'm sure most of you have this set up already, but you can have, once you purchase Keepa subscription, you can have the Chrome extension on your Amazon listing. I don't want to scroll too far because I have my address, I think, just above this, but we're looking at a Purina Bag and Strips dog product, right? Some training treat. And we are looking at, so you got all your Keepa, tabs here. We have data and then offers. You have product details, offers, buy box statistics. Really, offers and buy box statistics are some of the most that Jonathan and I look at. But today we're going to go strictly on offers because as you can see, scroll through, there is a lot of information here. So we're going to break down each column basically and kind of how to best use all this information and piece it together to help us make informed buying decisions on our inventory because we're not just going to look at this number and say, wow, it sold 1,000 times last month, let's buy 500, right? We need a little more information there, but a lot of the information we see here is going to help give us context clues, piece things together. So I guess we'll start on the total price column. So this is price and shipping costs. Anything specific you got on this one, Jonathan?
No, I think just something worth noting in general, just before we dive into those, is that like you can manipulate or filter these. For one, if you on any of the columns, if you just click on, like if you click on the total price right there, scroll down, yeah, right there, you can rearrange them to be most expensive to least expensive and vice versa. If you keep doing that, if you only want to look at competition, you can click on, if you're doing FBA only, or Prime, right? Because a lot of times you just want to compare apples to apples and sometimes don't get so concerned. Now there's so many nuances with Amazon and Keepa, but I think it's just worth noting that on any of the columns, you can click on it and you can rearrange these to view them however you want. So yeah, as far as the first column, there's not a whole lot to it there. It's pretty straightforward. It's going to be the prices of everyone that's selling them.
Yep, exactly. I'm just gonna plug my second monitor in so I can
Sure.
keep the chat up on the side just in case. But yeah, that first column, I mean, I basically don't toy with it unless I really need specific data. I do like filtering by prime and even including historical data too.
Mm-hmm.
The reason we include the historical is mostly because if you have a fast selling product, so we'll go to price history real quick just to demonstrate. So let's just assume we have this is a little bit faster seller and we're looking at 18 sellers and then it goes all the way down to 12 sellers. Well, all 6 of those sellers are not currently on the listing anymore. So basically the current Keepa data, right? The offers data, their prices aren't going to show up here because they have 0 in stock. So they're not going to show up as in stock. Their data won't show up, right? And we can kind of see like, okay, let's uncheck Prime just so we get some numbers here. But you can see on this listing doesn't change a whole lot when we include historical on like total 30-day sales. But you will notice some listings, there are a lot of sellers that will, have sold 100 in the last month and they just sold out of their stock, right? And then you filter by historical and then all of a sudden the total adds up way more, closely to what the actual sales rank is compared to, the sales ranks, pretty low and you're only seeing like 30 sales a month on the data that's given. So you want to be able to correlate certain things and including historical is going to help you with that. The price, again, it's not super helpful to filter by price unless again, you want to look at like what's the highest sellers at, but a lot of times those high sellers haven't sold a lot or their stock is goofy because they're listed way too high for the listing. We would prefer to sort by, something like sold or 30-day sold that are gonna, help us better understand this listing. So next column, pretty self-explanatory, new condition. I don't know if this is the same thing with you, Jonathan, but I like to uncheck the used. I mean, I'm not selling anything used. Like you said, we want to compare apples to apples. Why have looking at used products? It's just going to give us data that we really don't care to see or not. It's not really relevant either. Like a lot of used prices are lower than the new. So
I want as few pieces of information as possible while not losing any relative information. So being that I never sell used, to me, it's irrelevant, like you said.
Yep, exactly. So this listing isn't a great example with like checking Prime. Like we see that there are some Prime sellers historically, but we're not seeing a ton of data. So this maybe a faster selling listing is going to have a little bit more data here, but either way. So then price history, right? This is good information to just help us understand what prices are we seeing here. Now this column, to me, it's not crazy important because the Keepa data itself, the price history data, is going to give us, we basically care about like what is the buy box price historically. We don't care if some other sellers were listed $10 above the buy box and then all of a sudden they drop their price. Like to me, there's just not enough context in this graph. And obviously here, like the scale is too large, so it's not a big deal. But we see like the seller fluctuating their price a little bit. So to me, it's like, okay, is that actually data that we care to see? I mean, do you have any other opinion on this, John?
Yeah, so for me, I would unclick include historical data for me. And then, okay, also the graph range in days. Right now it's on 90. I think it's worth showing. But let's click on 180 for a sec. Okay, and we'll go back to 90. But basically, what I now, not in this example, but actually I do like it because it's just another context clue of how steady something is, or if it's trending a certain way. So if you see a seller that was selling something 3 months ago for 50 and it's been a steady increase, I like that. Contrarily, if they used to sell it for 50 and now it's been working its way down to 30, I don't like that. So I'm not saying I'm looking for one thing or the other, but this could be a good context clue of like what's going on with the trend. It shows you the trend of the price in a 3 month snapshot. So without like diving in too much, I think it's a good visual cue. Not like a super valuable one, but definitely for a visual clue. Sometimes I like it.
Yep. And the thing about this type of information, right? Like you could spend 10 minutes like deciphering each graph here of each seller. And I
Right.
don't think that's a great use of your time, but if you just get good at understanding like what's happening, has it gone up or has it gone down, right? Or is it pretty
Right.
flat on the price? And that's going to tell you one, like this type of fluctuation tells me that they're repricing probably pretty successfully. And if it's helping contribute to sales, great. So you could maybe correlate like the price history to the stock history. Is the stock going down when their price is moving? If their
Right.
price is flat and the stock isn't changing, then maybe that they're not repricing correctly or they're not getting the buy box as often as you would think. But just being able to glance at the graph, even if it's for 5 seconds, and saying, "Yep, they're probably repricing," or "Yep, they're lowering their price to get the buy box more often," is good information to have, right? It's a context clue. We're using that as a piece to the puzzle of that final decision of if we're going to buy this product or not. So,
Yeah, and by the way, using like that very top one right next to your cursor, that looks like a sharp drop, but we're talking between 32 and $36. It's not really a huge drop
yep,
proportionally, but visually it looks that way. So, again, just be mindful of that.
yep, and yeah, you look at this stuff enough, like we just said. I mean, you're gonna be able to see that. You see, oh, looks like a steep drop. 5 seconds of analysis, we see 36 to 32 percentage wise. If they have a low enough buy cost, like they can probably afford that drop, and it's not a big deal, right?
Right.
And maybe to you, it's the same way.
All right.
All right. So stock comp. So now we're getting into the data that's I feel has the biggest influence on my decision making on purchasing products. I'm going to think Jonathan has a similar reaction to that. So
Are,
I'll
are
try
we
to.
on sold or stock, Alex? Which, just so we're all on the same.
We'll start with sold,
Okay.
and then we'll kind of tie it into stock because
Okay.
I
Okay.
think there's a pretty big correlation there.
Just making sure. Got it.
Yep.
Yeah. You
Go ahead.
know,
You can start us off.
yeah, as far as that goes, for me, what I really just want to see is numbers. Like this happens to be a good selling product, so the numbers are really high. But like sometimes you'll see something that it's like one sold, two sold, like regardless of the actual quantities of these, I just like seeing that it's confirming that it's selling very well, right? I never play the game of trying to guess how many is it selling. I'll do my test buys and I'll go from there. You're never going to know exactly sure. And even if this is selling actually 1,500 times in 3 months, I'm still not going to test by more than 20 unless it's like very, very, I have good insight on that, right? So that's why it's not so concerning to me the exact total. I just want a good clue that it is selling, and all of those strong numbers across all the sellers tells me it's definitely selling.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, that's kind of how I would explain it. Like the columns, the numbers itself, like 800, like we need a lot of context to understand if it sells for 800, right? Like or
Mhm.
800, that seller sold 800 themselves. They're an FBM seller, so the data is right there just makes me a little skeptical, but just seeing that there is some movement, and again, the price history movement as well might give you also some more confidence that it is selling, right? Like we see the price moving, and then we see a number that is in the sold column. So
Yeah.
kind of paired with that, I don't have too much more to say on the sold because again, it's by a standalone. There's not like I don't see this number and I say, oh shoot, I got to buy 800 of these and maybe in 3 months I'll sell out. Like that is just
Yeah.
kind of like a lazy approach to analyzing the data, and we need a little bit more information to actually like understand if it's worth purchasing a bunch or a couple at a time.
Yep. I agree. I basically what I love about the offers tab, I mean, there's a couple of things that are more important than others, but it's got like 5, 6 data points, none of which by themselves carry a tremendous amount of weight, but help paint a picture in conjunction with a Keepa graph and all your other clues, you know?
Yep, exactly. So then kind of pairing that, what gives us a little bit more back and forth, and there's some correlation, is the stock counts. So
Yeah.
one thing I like to also pay attention to when looking at the sold, right? We just said we don't look at the sold by itself. We don't look at the stock by itself. Sold 30 days, depending on how you pair it with the stock history chart, right? We can get a little bit more context. But if we look at these two together, right, we're understanding, in my mind, I like to understand, is there more stock on the listing than there is sold units? So we're getting a kind of the supply and demand of this product. Is there more supply than there is demand? Or is it grossly, swinging in one way? Is there, 3,000 in stock and 50 sold? Like that's a little bit of a red flag to me. And then we look into the data, we got to make sure that there is that much stock, or there's, seller amp or whatever tells us that there's actually more stock than there are sales happening on this listing. And the sales rank can give you, right, there's a bunch of different pieces that will give you that data, or at least help you estimate it. But if we see something, again, we're not looking at the exact numbers, because this stuff, can we really trust that this person has 200 in stock? Maybe, maybe not. I feel like that's a lot to have in stock on a product that, we'll kind of look at the graph here. It's a 60K rank in pet supplies, which isn't great. If you sell pet supplies in the past, it's only like 30 to 50 sales a month. So this data here is a little confusing, but we do see like a correlation between, we don't see this sold number being way higher than the stock, or we don't see the stock being way higher than the sold. So that's kind of how I analyze the data. I don't know if you do anything different, Jonathan, but basically I'm just checking. It's kind of like a gut check on the supply and demand on this listing.
Yeah, for me, there's also two things I want to add to that. For one, if somebody is, let's say something historically sells for $40, but somebody is selling it for $30, I like to evaluate, are they going to sell out? And then can I base my assessment on a $40 sale price? And if I come here and see that they have 1,000 units in stock, then I would be crazy to think that I'm going to get in anytime soon and get $40. I mean, could I get some sales? Probably. So for one, for the outlier sellers, specifically the low price ones, I like to know where they stand. Okay. Also, I like to come here because the number of sellers you see on a Keepa chart doesn't mean nearly as much as how much stock there is. If there's 10 sellers in the Keepa chart, it looks like there's 10 sellers, but if they all have one piece of stock, that's only 10 items that have to be sold. Contrarily, if there's 10 sellers and they all have 100 pieces of stock, but on a Keepa chart, the number of sellers is the same. So that's one thing here. Another is that I really like seeking out of stock items, and this helps me confirm that supply is actually dwindling. If I am doing sourcing and I realize I can't find this anywhere except for one site, and this is a good selling product, this is another context clue to say, okay, these people that have been on the listing, they only have 1 or 2 pieces of stock left, whatever low number it is, and that gives me more confidence that they're having trouble accessing it too. So if I can get my hands on it, it's probably a winner. And then just kind of like what you were saying, Alex, yeah, it's just kind of like a balance sheet type of thing as well.
Yep. Yeah. And I think you made a good point, how tying this information, like these two numbers, into the chart itself, like you can see the rise and fall of the offer count. And that's actually pretty important information if you don't fully trust. I mean, it's important information all the time, but if you don't trust these numbers, which again, just putting 2 and 2 together, we see it's like a 60K rank in a pet supplies, which isn't going to sell more than maybe 100 times per month. But we see this is claiming it's sold this many, there's this many in stock, right? But it's still saying, like, we see some supply and demand information. Can we pair that and make a correlation with the chart, right? And if we see that offer count going down, going back up, going down, at least we know it is selling, right? Like there's definitely some sales happening. We just need to dig into the data to see who's getting those sales. How often are they changing their price? Are they dropping their price? We can go back to the chart to kind of double check that, double confirm that. So there's a lot of stuff here, but if you know what to look for and what's like good information, what's kind of like a false positive information, you're just going to be better off, and you will get faster over time. I mean, John and I have been looking at Keepa charts for 4 years now. So
Yeah.
I think we got this stuff down pat. We can look at this and make an analysis in probably 30 seconds. But, if you're not seeing this stuff all the time, it's just going to take some time. So with that, I think we should talk about the sold 30 days, because now we're getting to a little bit more relevant information. Again, it's just like what's happened recently. It's not going to give us the entire picture. But if we see that somebody sold, right, like 385 in total in the amount of complete stock history that they've ever had on this listing, they sold 95 of that in the last 30 days. That's telling us that they've consistently been in stock and they've been selling at least 100 in the last 30 days. So that's, to me, that's that if this is true, which again we'll break down a little bit further, why I think this probably isn't quite an accurate number. But if we're just looking at it face value, selling 95 plus selling a bunch in the past means they've been selling this product for a while and they're confident that they can continue to sell it. So they're, staying in stock enough where they can sell 100 times a month, right? A lot of times sellers will buy a test buy of 10. It'll take them 2 weeks to sell out. And then they'll say, okay, if I just bought 20, I could probably sell 20 in a month. Not knowing that if they were in stock for the entire 30 days of the month, they probably could have sold 40, 50 maybe, right? There's a lot of that in there too. So
Yeah.
I guess the sold 30 days is, I like to pair it with the stock history chart, which we can jump in or you can give your opinion too on this. But basically, we're looking at like how much are they selling? And then the stock history chart kind of helps us confirm if this number is accurate. And again, I'm not looking at this number even remotely, really. I'm just, like you kind of said on the sold, like we just want to see numbers here. We want to see that it's not blank. We want to see stock history charts that aren't just flatlined. Kind of helps us confirm, like, is the sales, we know the sales rank, what it is this data kind of helping back up our opinion on that?
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that. That's really all it is for me.
Yep. So then going to stock history chart, like we have to really understand the stock history is helpful because on an FBA listing, right, Keepa is pulling your stock data right from Amazon. So like it knows when stuff is selling. It doesn't know when stuff sells really, but it knows when your stock goes from 6 to 5 down to 4. But unfortunately, what you can do with your stock counts as an FBM seller is manipulate it to whatever number you want, and Keepa will track that information. So what we can see in this seller, if we zoom in, right, so just keep in mind they sold 846 in the last 30 days. If we take a look at their stock history, 98 down to 4. So that you're telling me they sold 94 of these units in one day. And if you look at the time scale on it, if we really zoom in, right, 5:27 to 9. So in 4 hours, they sold 96. To me, that's either a glitch or that's them changing their stock count to try to trigger the algorithm to give them the sale or, give them the buy box, whatever it is. And then just right back up, it goes back up to this 98 range a couple different times. So basically how Keepa is calculating this number is they're taking the stock history, and every time there's a drop in the stock count, they're counting that as a sale. Doesn't matter if it's an FC transfer, doesn't matter if it's a FBM manual change, like the seller's changing their stock numbers. It's going to count it as sales history. So that's why we have to kind of get more context on this number. And this bottom number here, never look at that and say, oh, that's the total sales for the month, right? We want to look at the variations. We want to look at, a seller amp estimate. We want to look at Jungle Scout estimate to give us, more information on what the rank is. And does the offers tab give us, confirmation on that rank?
So do me a favor, go to the fourth one down. So just the chart there. So going back to the example of what you just gave, sorry, try to have it so the top one's in there too. Just scroll down a little bit for me. Yeah. So like the top one, I rule a lot of this stuff out because like Alex made the point, no, they didn't sell 100 in hours. Okay. So for that, it's transfers, it's removal orders, whatever it is. But what I like to do is actually look at the more natural charts. So like the third and fourth one, if hover for me, Alex, on the fourth one at the peak there. So
I'll just
there's
zoom
like,
because it does
yeah,
look pretty
perfect.
consistent.
So it's decreasing, but it's not like outrageous. So at the high point, there was what, 7?
7, yep.
7 on February 8th. And what did it take? And so a week later, so they sold through 7 in a week, basically. And so for me, then I'm like, oh, interesting. Okay. And then the one above that, you can see there they went from 4 to like 2 over the course of 2 weeks. They're probably not getting a huge buy box share. So now I'm like, okay, one seller got 7, another got 2. I'm kind of painting a picture here. So the more natural charts, I like to literally do what we're doing and just hover, pick a time at the peak, pick a time at the valley, and see how long did it take for that to occur. And then you can kind of extrapolate. Like if there's just 3 sellers and they all have natural looking charts, and over the course of 2 weeks, one sold 10, one sold 18, one sold 12, I'm like, okay, that's a total of, I don't even know what numbers I threw out. Let's say 40 in 2 weeks. So that would tell me 80 in a month, right? And then I'm going to, yeah, that's another a normal looking one. What's that there? 10 down to, basically it looks like they sold 6 or 7 in a 3-month span, right? So to me, actually looking at these, it's kind of interesting because the sold column and the stock column to the left of this chart paints a much, much different picture. And I actually don't believe those numbers based on, as Alex said, sales rank and pet. And now we're looking at this stock history. The stock history chart, like I said, I like to hover the peak and valleys and then extrapolate. Like I do that for all the sellers maybe in the last month or so. And that's how you can get a really good idea of how many actually sell, in my opinion. So the ones that are natural can be very valuable.
Yep, I totally agree. I that's what I love to see is, and on this listing, if you don't have, right, if you're on a listing and there's only like 3 sellers in the listing, and right, and maybe one of them's FBM, and you don't get a great chart, if you include historical, it's going to show every seller that's ever been on the listing. And if they have sold product and it's a good rank, you will see, enough charts like this to give you a little bit more confidence. Obviously, some people that have been off the listing for months now, they're going to be included in historical, but they're not going to show a bunch of data here. But to me, what I have seen here is that when people are in stock, and FBA specifically, we see a pretty natural progression in sales on like at least like 5 or 6 different sellers that I've seen. So we see 8 down to 2, like you said. And if you really want to break it down as far as like write down, stock count, right? So 8 sold in 2 weeks, and you go to a different seller and write this down. 7 sold in a week. And then you kind of take the average, or you use all that information and say, I mean, this seller was pretty consistent, at least like 1 a day until they hit 1 in stock. Okay, well, obviously, like they're going to run out of stock and they're not going to sell any, and they haven't replenished since. So if they had 20 in stock, would they have sold all 20 1 a day? Would they have sold 20 in 20 days? To me, I that's believable, right? Like that's information based on this that I could believe. So, you could test buy 7 or 8 units and see if you have the similar trend. At least like if we do look at the overall sales rank, and let's just assume a 60K rank in pet is only going to sell 30 times per month, but we see all this stock, we see all these numbers here, but we do see a couple sellers that have sold like 7 in a week, which means, if you extrapolate out, like you said, we could sell, maybe 28 to 30 in a month. Like if you're feeling like that's a good analysis, buy 30 and expect to sell it in a month, or buy 7 to 10, see if it sells out in a week. And that's great information to have, because when this information is a little faulty, your own personal sales history is going to be the best information.
Let me just point something out there to that chart you were just going over right there. They sold through, this is a really good tip. So if you look at those dates, I think that was February 8th to the 14th when they got the movement, right?
Yep.
We'll go over to their price history chart. Look what they did right there. They dipped the price during that exact time, it looks like.
Yeah. The 8th is right here. So once they got the sales, they popped it right back up by quite a bit, almost $10.
So there's a good way to like also always make sure that you're equating for supply and demand, right? Like if they're going to get more sales if they dip the price. So just pay attention to what price are the actual sales happening at. And that's a really easy way to check it out.
Yep. And I think when you were mentioning this earlier, we were looking at, I think we had the right chart. Yeah, I have historical in here. That's why it's different. Okay. So like, yeah, you look at some of these here and you can see like, okay, this seller has, like we kind of mentioned, the more you have in stock, the more you're going to sell. Not always the case, but like we got to understand like what are these sellers listed at as well. So sometimes you'll see like this seller 4 stock down to 2, and it took almost 2 weeks for that to happen. But they're listed at 38.76, right? This seller 37.95, and they sold more in a week, right? So it's kind of like, okay, was that extra dollar lower price, was that enough for the market to, or maybe they just had the low price? If there's no buy box, right, the lowest price is going to get the sale more often than not. Or if there is a buy box, right, maybe this seller just wasn't in the buy box often enough to get enough sales. So
right,
a lot of different things to think about, but as long as you're understanding like what the information says here, you can just use that as like, okay, well, it's still, this seller sold 7, so at the minimum I'm hoping I can sell 7 if we don't see a giant influx in sellers in stock.
If nothing else, it's a good tab to confirm something is selling at the minimum, and you have multiple ways of doing that.
Yep. And then, like we said, your own sales history, if you do a test buy, how often that sells, how quickly that sells. I mean, pay attention to when it checks in and stuff. But, that information is going to be the most helpful. But it's going to, this stuff will confirm, what you thought about it on top of your own sales history. Let's go to the chat real quick because hopefully these people that asked the questions are still here.
Yep.
But Shane asked, when looking at seasonal products, when you come to the time frame, say May of last year, do you guys buy and expect to get that price? For example, back to school, would you purchase thinking it will hit that?
I mean, I would certainly go back to those products, but I wouldn't assume anything without the data. What if it's a backpack and this year the manufacturer has made 10 times the amount, right? So I'm still going to do my due diligence just because it sold last year. I don't know that it's going to sell this year. And frankly, but let's say all of that was the same, I would even think a higher price with inflation and everything else. So I think it would be safe. But again, how many sellers are there this year versus last year? How much stock does it feel like is available? Too many factors to answer that straight up.
Yep. And if you've been watching us for a while, you can kind of get the sense that we're risk averse, but in like an aggressive way. Like we know the data that is going to give us the lowest potential risk on these products. So to me, just hearing that out loud, like if we're buying products in May, expecting to sell them end of July, early August at prices that we saw last year, like it's a good thought and it's a good theory that like, oh, the buzz will be around on these backpacks, but there are plenty of backpack listings that were either gated or they had some issues where Amazon took the listing down. So if you're buying with the expectation that, it's going to be good in a few months, to me, there's a lot of risk when I know that from my own experience, I should be able to find similar backpacks in different listings when the stuff is already selling and replenishing those as quick as possible. Like I had a 100K month this last August with selling a lot of backpacks and replenishing them in retail arbitrage and stuff like that, because I was just looking at the current data, what the data was telling me, and buying off of that. Like I didn't buy 200 backpacks in a couple months ahead of time to plan for that. It was kind of using the real-time data. So yeah, I don't know. In my mind, it's just a lot of risk buying that far ahead of time in case something happens to the listing. But you're going to find so many good listings related to back to school during that time frame that if you're feeling like you're going to miss out, or that's why you're buying or thinking of buying and hoping to sell at last year's prices, don't feel that way, because there's so much opportunity there.
Yep.
David asks, people talk about sourcing specifically to an increasing price trend, decreasing seller count, etc., but I put the emphasis on 90-day averages, so it doesn't seem very relevant. Does my mindset make sense? I think maybe he's referring to a Keepa product finder search.
Or I think just in general, he's saying like, if I buy something today, I'm going to buy it based on the 90-day sale price, you know?
Sure. Yep. Yep.
And so as somebody who loves seeking out decreasing seller count and increasing price, I understand what you're saying, but I personally would not do that because 90 days is a long time. The average of what it could be, 10 weeks ago is just not necessarily what's going to happen in the upcoming weeks. If there's a huge, or not even huge, if there's starting to be an obvious trend of an increase in sellers, and I have reason to believe the product is not any harder to get, I'm not going to necessarily think that it's going to sell for the same average, and even with averages, I don't want to be on the low end. Every average has a low end and a high end. I want to always try to get it on the high end, right? Now it
Yep.
doesn't always pan out that way, but I think it's very important to look at where you're at right now and know that things don't go live 2 weeks from now. So if you ignore the trends and just play the averages, it might pan out for faster moving items, but personally, I don't subscribe to that.
Yep. I'm kind of in the same boat. I feel like you explained that pretty well. All right, let's jump back. We have a couple more columns here. These are a little bit less important, not as relevant of information, I guess, if we're understanding like sales history, stuff like that. So we'll probably get through these pretty quick and then wrap up here. So we'll just go back and forth. Why don't we? So the prime and FBA, right? That, like we mentioned, like if you want to sort by those, that's going to be your main competition on most listings.
Right.
There are going to be some FBM sellers that maybe undercut the price. They're getting the buy box share. But for the most part, FBA sellers are going to be your main competition if you're selling FBA. So sometimes it makes a lot of sense to just highlight the FBA sellers, the prime sellers. And that information is going to be relevant to you because, again, for us at least, we're seeing the most consistent sales drops on the stock history on the FBA sellers versus the FBM sellers, right? We see a lot of this. The same with this seller here. It goes 195 down to 100, back up to 195, and it counted 95 sales in that amount of time. So that information, can we really trust it? So sometimes sorting by the prime is good, and that check mark just basically signifies what sellers. On top of that, it has the seller name here, their rating, their review counts. So to me, that information is helpful when you're looking at listing and who's on the listing, right? So if you see a lot of sellers that are sitting at there's 4 sellers on the listing and they all have 10,000 reviews or more, makes me question, will I get the buy box share as a seller with 100 reviews, right? Or even less than that. So that's kind of how I read that information. Do you analyze this any differently?
Yeah, I don't necessarily look to it too much, but to your point, like if I'm trying to paint a picture, somebody seems to always have stock, somebody is always the lowest price, and they have 3,000 reviews. I'm saying, okay, this is probably a wholesaler and they're going to be able to beat me on price 99% of the time. So it's an uphill battle.
Yep.
And the only other thing I would say is that if you look at a seller's rating and it's not good, I mean, I think not good is frankly, I would say under 95%, I don't know.
Unless they're a new seller. I mean, I can
Yeah.
see someone with 10 reviews having like 90.
I would,
But
look at their total review count, their rating. But I guess the point I want to make though is, I would take it with a grain of salt if somebody's got low reviews, low rating percentage, and
a ton in stock.
a ton in stock, or they're selling it for such a high price, and you just think that because that's the list price, it's going to sell for that.
Shows
Basically,
an
what I'm looking at
experience.
is
Data's helping you show an experience kind of in that sell.
right. A credible seller just makes me more confident that, oh, this person has credibility and they're on this listing. I feel better about it. B, I might go save their storefront if this is a really good product or a unique product, etc.
Yep. And actually the nice thing about the name here, it might seem kind of irrelevant. You can click on the name. Otherwise you can copy, I'm not sure how to copy it, but you can copy the seller ID.
Yes.
And then when you do a Keepa product finder search, you can sort through, their entire storefront. If they have, I think it helps to like click into it. I'm not sure what's going to pop up if any of my personal info is. So I'm not going to click on the link, but basically, yeah, you can see, if they have a bunch of products and you trust them as a seller based on, say, this product specifically, you can sort through all their listings, sort by every listing they have that's under 100K in certain category, right? Whatever you want to do, keep a product finder. But if you find some really good storefronts, this is where you can save their storefront ID.
I love doing that. Yeah, I mean, I said it to be easy, but you save the code and then you plug it in to Keepa Product Finder, like Alex said, and literally not only do you have their entire catalog, but now you can filter their catalog. Which of these products has a decreasing seller count, increasing price, and I give them instant credibility because they have a great rating and they're on a listing that I know is a little unique, So like in that game, just you can play that game all day long.
You'll have infinite amount of seller storefronts to look at if you're on a good listing. I mean, we can go just historical too if we wanted. And there's just going to be like, if you find that this is a really good listing and you're just looking at all the FBA sellers, right? I mean, there's going to be tons of them to look through, and it could be as quick as, they only have 10 products on their storefront. Right. Skip it and then go on to the next one. But there's a ton to look through. It's going to give you a lot of great information. Let's okay, so there's a couple more columns here. Kind of cool information. We'll talk about it. You guys can kind of make your decision on whether or not it's relevant to you. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, maybe it's listing dependent, but obviously this stuff don't have a lot of information there. And we haven't really talked about like configuring the columns. There is more information you can provide. You can have, if Amazon is on the listing, some of the time you can have like their out of stock percentage, similar to stuff that you'll see on like a Keepa Product Finder search. You can filter by a lot of that stuff on these columns, which is great. This is just all the things that I have available because, again, most of the information I'm looking at is in this section. And then, this stuff is just a little bit of added context. So last seen is basically telling you, if I'm not mistaken, it's telling you when they last changed their price. Is that how you read that? Like if they reprice, it'll say, when their repricer last triggered.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I'm not exactly sure. Last seen Prime exclusive.
That's how I've seen it, because a lot of times on a fast moving listing, it's like 1 minute ago.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
So it's like, okay, well, it's got to tie into price, and if they have a repricer, it's going to change all the time. Yeah. So that column not super important, but the first seen column actually kind of interesting, because what that tells you is when did they first get on this listing, and if they have, this, if you look at the stock history chart and it's been moving for 3 months, or if you go back to the 180-day chart and you see it's been moving for 6 months, and you see they've been on the listing for that long and they've had stock go up and down, tells you that they found a good source for this product and they've been on it long enough to trust it longer than just a test buy. If you see a bunch of sellers on this listing for 1 month, 20 days, whatever, but we see a couple sellers that have been on this a long time, which tells me that, they have a lot of trust in this product, and maybe they found a really good source that hasn't really ever saturated, or it's just a good replen for them, right? That's kind of good information to know.
Yeah, no, totally. That's good. To be honest, I never really dabbled with those, but that makes a lot of sense. I mean, if somebody's been on it a long time as well, and they're still on it, and it's recent and active, like that's a good sign too, because that means they're having success with it.
Yep. And I'm not looking at it and I'm not scanning every seller on it, right? But I just like to see real quick, like, okay, the top 5 sellers in this listing, they've all been on it longer than like 6 months. It's like, okay, well, there's a reason. It's not that they haven't sold out of their stock in 6 months. It's that they probably sold, repurchased, sold. I mean, it's got to be a good product, or they're hitting it on certain sales cycles, and you'll see that, right? Maybe they had stock and then they fell off and then they came back and had stock. But first seen is just going to say, when did they first get on this listing? If it was a long time ago, chances are, and that might, if it's a wholesale listing, you'll hopefully get some other context clues before you get to this point to see, wow, every seller's been on this listing for 4 years. Okay, well, that's gonna, you should notice that in the prior information, but at least on like an arbitrage listing, this will hopefully give you some confidence that, okay, some sellers are confident in this product, that they have been on it longer than a test buy. It's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, totally. I think that's pretty much it for that, right?
Yeah, we blew through that. And there, again, there's a lot of configure columns. Like we could go, so I do have it set up where it'll show Amazon's price if they are in stock. They're obviously not in stock on this listing. If you're on a variation listing, it'll also give their price. But actually, maybe they were on this listing at one point. If we include historical, I think Amazon was in there at one point. Thought I saw it in here, but maybe not. But anyways, it'll show their price. It'll say Amazon. Oh, here we go. Right here. It'll highlight in orange. So you'll notice that Amazon's on the listing.
Yeah.
Probably haven't sold it in a long time, 54 months ago. So they've been on this listing for 3+ years, 4+ years. So this is an old listing, right? But it's, that's why it sold 30 days is kind of good information, a little bit better information. It gives us more recent data than, this person could have sold 800 out of the 857 in, 12 months ago, and then finally sold the last of their, like it could have been on a variation listing. It got kicked off and it just, the rank skyrocketed, whatever the case is. But
yeah,
hopefully you guys got some good information out of this. Let's see, we got a couple questions. We'll jump to those quick and then wrap up here. Can you drop a Keepa product finder gem? Maybe we'll do that in that next chat. Because Jonathan's a Keepa product finder master. So we'll maybe do some sample searches or just talk about Keepa product finder in general. I feel like that.
Yeah, we could literally do like a search per video, and maybe we will, but we'll save that just for the sake of time for now.
Yep. Shane, thanks, fellas. Good insight on longevity of sellers. We'll take a peek on that moving forward. David, is there any way to get a Keepa product finder search, see if there's a gap in price from the lowest offer and the second lowest? Not sure. We might have to look into that.
I don't think that you can filter it by seller A versus seller B. Something you could do is try to filter it so that the buy box is different than the new sale price. So what I mean is, like, sometimes listings won't get suppressed or the buy box let's say somebody's selling it for $59.99. Okay. They won't get the buy box, but the buy box is, $39.99 type of thing. Right. But you can see, is the seller selling it at $59.99 actually getting some sales? Once in a blue moon, maybe, so like you can do, like, again, we'd have to be in there, but you can filter it because I know you can filter it like, hey, can you filter it so that if Amazon's selling it for X price, is there a buy box that's actually above what Amazon is selling it for? Meaning Amazon isn't winning the buy box, even though they're on the listing and even though they are a lesser price. So the answer to that in a weird way is yes. We have to look into like exactly how to manipulate it.
We should, when we have time, we should film an actual YouTube video, like a long Keepa product, because I post a couple different Keepa product finder searches and stuff. I feel like we could just come up with like a really in-depth, good breakdown of it. We could do it here too, but I feel like a produced video would be some good content. But anyway, appreciate everybody for sticking with us. There's a lot of information we gave away there, but I think once you start tie things together, it's going to make it a little bit easier to understand. The Keepa data can get overwhelming, especially. So, I mean, I understand if you guys got to watch this over again. The offers tab, there's so much information there. Just make sure you're not taking one of the data points and using that as the decision, right? Don't just say, oh, wow, this listing sold 1,300 stock or 1,300 units. I'm going to buy 100. Like, that's just poor decision making. You need more context. Use all the different pieces. Use the chart itself. Use the buy box statistics tab. I mean, there's a lot of data, but just try to simplify it and pick the data points that make the most sense. And you're going to definitely buy some good inventory.
Yeah, I would just end with you're never trying to pinpoint how much does it sell, exactly how fast it sells. You're just trying to paint a good picture of, is this selling? Is it selling well? What price is it typically selling for? And using the offers tab is just another really good way to help paint the picture. That's all, in my opinion, that's what you're doing every decision. You're just trying to gather all your data points and make an educated decision.
Great way to end it. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you next week.